produce section at Harper's Grocery has fruits and vegetables that never rot, no matter how long they sit on our shelves, and some of the apples still have bite marks from customers who shopped here during the Civil War. I found a cornbread mix dated 1863 that's still fresh enough to bake, and yesterday a customer paid for groceries with Confederate money that our cash register accepted like it was printed yesterday. What really bothers me isn't that our food stays preserved forever, like it's been blessed by some unholy magic. It's that customers keep asking for items that were rationed during the war, like salt pork and hardtack biscuits that we haven't sold in 150 years. When I tell them we're out of stock, they just nod sadly and say they'll wait, then sit in our parking lot until morning, staring at the store like they've got nowhere else to go. My name's Jasper Whitmore, and I've been working the night shift at Harper's Grocery on Highway 231 in Dothan for 3 months now. The pay's decent, $15 an hour to stock shelves and handle the register between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Most folks warned me away from this job when old Mr. Caldwell finally retired after 43 years. They'd shake their heads and mutter about strange happenings and that cursed place, but I figured they were just spreading small-town gossip. Should have listened to them. The building sits on what used to be a Confederate supply depot during the war. You can still see the original brick foundation if you look close enough in the stockroom, and sometimes I swear I smell gunpowder mixed with the scent of fresh bread from our bakery. The locals say Union soldiers burned the depot in 1865, trapping supplies and workers inside. Whether that's true or not, something definitely happened here that left a mark. My first night, I thought the security cameras were malfunctioning. They'd show empty aisles 1 second, then customers in period clothing the next. Women in long dresses, pushing carts full of flour and molasses, men in Confederate gray asking for tobacco and ammunition. When I'd walk over to help them, the aisles would be empty again. Harper's grandson, Tommy Harper, owns the store now. He's lived in Dothan his whole life, graduated from Dothan High in '98, and runs a clean business during the day. But when he hired me, he handed over a wrinkled piece of paper, along with my employee handbook. "These are the real rules," he said, his voice barely steady. "Follow them exactly, and you might make it through your shifts. Break even one, and..." He trailed off, staring at a display of canned peaches that looked old enough to have been there since the store opened. The paper contained 7 rules, written in faded blue ink. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke or initiation ritual for new employees. 3 months later, after seeing what happens when you ignore them, I keep that paper folded in my shirt pocket every night. The edges are worn smooth from my sweaty fingers, tracing over the words, trying to make sense of them. Tonight, I'm writing this down because something's changed. The rules aren't working like they used to, and I'm starting to think my time here is running out. The first rule seemed harmless enough when I read it that first night. Between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, stock only the produce section. Do not acknowledge any customers who enter during this time, even if they speak directly to you. I figured it was some weird company policy about avoiding distractions during restocking. Tommy had shown me around earlier that evening, pointing out the walk-in cooler, the loading dock where trucks delivered fresh goods, and the ancient cash register that still used mechanical keys instead of a touchscreen. "That register's older than my granddaddy," he'd said, tapping the brass keys. "But it works better than any modern system we've tried." My shift started normal enough. A few late-night customers wandered in. Truckers grabbing energy drinks, college kids from Troy University buying snacks for study sessions, a woman in scrubs who worked at Southeast Alabama Medical Center picking up formula for her baby. Regular folks living regular lives. At 11:25 p.m., I wheeled the produce cart from the stockroom toward the front of the store. The cart squeaked with each rotation, its wheels wobbling like they hadn't been oiled in decades. Boxes of lettuce, tomatoes, and bananas sat stacked in neat rows, waiting to replace the days picked over selection. As I arranged the first head of lettuce, I heard the automatic doors slide open. Footsteps echoed through the store, not the rubber-soled sneakers or work boots I'd grown accustomed to, but the sharp click of hard leather soles against linoleum. The sound reminded me of my grandfather's Sunday shoes, the kind men wore to church in the 1950s. "Excuse me, young man," a voice called from aisle 3. The tone carried the formal politeness of an older generation, each syllable pronounced with careful consideration. "Might you direct me toward the molasses?" My wife needs it for her baking. I kept arranging lettuce, focusing on making each head face the same direction. The rule was clear. Don't acknowledge customers during this half-hour window. But the voice persisted. "Son, I'm speaking to you. It's common courtesy to respond when addressed." The footsteps moved closer. Through my peripheral vision, I caught sight of pressed gray trousers and polished black boots. The fabric looked thick, hand-woven, nothing like the machine-made clothing sold at Walmart or Target. A faint scent drifted toward me, not cologne or aftershave, but something earthier. Pipe tobacco mixed with wood smoke and something else I couldn't identify. "My wife's been waiting since supper for this molasses. She's making gingerbread for the church social tomorrow." The voice grew impatient. "Are you deaf, boy?" My hands trembled as I reached for another head of lettuce. The customer stepped closer, close enough that I could feel body heat radiating from wherever he stood. But when I glanced at the security mirror mounted above the produce section, it showed only me standing alone next to the vegetable display. "Fine then, I'll find it myself." The footsteps moved toward aisle 4, where we kept baking supplies and canned goods. Metal containers rattled as if someone was searching through them, pushing items aside with growing frustration. I continued stalking, placing apples in perfect pyramids, straightening bundles of celery. The wall clock above the checkout lanes ticked toward midnight with agonizing slowness. Each second stretched longer than the last, and the rattling in aisle 4 grew more violent. "Where's the molasses?" The voice turned sharp, angry. "What kind of general store doesn't carry molasses? How's a man supposed to feed his family?" Glass shattered somewhere in the store, then another crash, followed by the metallic sound of cans rolling across the floor. I gripped the edge of the produce cart, knuckles white against the metal handles, and forced myself to keep working. 2 minutes until midnight. Just 2 more minutes. The crashes stopped. Silence settled over the store like dust after a windstorm. Even the constant hum of the refrigeration units seemed muted. I arranged the last bunch of bananas and checked my watch. 11:59 p.m. At exactly midnight, I heard a different sound. Coins hitting the checkout counter in a steady rhythm. Ping, 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 like quarters dropping into the collection plate at Sunday service. I turned around and saw 3 silver coins sitting on the register, each one larger than a modern quarter and bearing the face of some long-dead president. The automatic doors slid open and closed, though nobody walked through them. Fresh air swept into the store, carrying the scent of magnolia blossoms and something else. That same earthy smell from before, but stronger now. Wood smoke and pipe tobacco, mixed with the metallic tang of old coins and something that reminded me of freshly dug earth. I walked over to examine the coins. They were heavy, solid silver, dated 1863. Confederate currency that looked like it had been minted yesterday. The same kind of money I'd seen other customers use during my first week, before I understood what this place really was. The register drawer popped open on its own, waiting for me to deposit the payment for goods that were never taken. The second rule waited for me 3 nights later, written in that same faded blue ink. If you hear children laughing in the cereal aisle after 1 a.m., play the radio on AM station 1020. Let it run until the laughter stops. Never look down aisle 7 during this time. I'd started keeping a small notebook to document each encounter, writing down times, temperatures, and any details I could remember. The Confederate coins had been real enough. Tommy found them in the register the next morning and didn't seem surprised. "Put those in the safe," he'd told me over the phone. "We get them sometimes. Don't ask me what to do with them, because I honestly don't know." Tuesday night brought the first test of Rule 2. I was organizing the dairy section, replacing expired milk with fresh gallons from the walk-in cooler, when I heard it. High-pitched giggles echoed from somewhere near the front of the store, followed by the sound of small feet running across linoleum floors. The laughter carried a quality, not quite right, like an old recording played through damaged speakers. It reminded me of the children's choirs at my grandmother's Baptist church in Enterprise, except hollow, missing something essential that makes laughter warm. I grabbed the portable radio from behind the customer service counter and tuned it to AM 1020. Static filled the air. Then a voice emerged through the crackling interference. A man speaking in the measured cadence of old-time radio, talking about crop prices and weather patterns from decades past. "Good evening, folks. This is Woof bringing you the overnight report from Houston County. Cotton futures are holding steady, and we've got clear skies expected through Thursday morning. Mrs. Patterson from the Wicksburg community called to report her prize-winning tomatoes are coming in early this year." The children's laughter grew louder, more insistent. Through the radio static, I could hear them playing some kind of game, counting rhymes mixed with clapping songs that sounded familiar, but wrong. Like nursery rhymes with words changed to mean different things. 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to let go. I knew that song. My sister used to sing it while jumping rope in our backyard. But these children sang additional verses I'd never heard before. Verses about soldiers and battles and hungry times when crops wouldn't grow. The radio broadcaster continued his report, oblivious to the supernatural chorus echoing through the store. "Now, folks, we've got a special dedication coming up from the children of Dothan Elementary's class of 1944. They're sending this one out to their daddies overseas." That's when I understood. The broadcaster wasn't from decades past. He was from 1944, the same year those elementary students would have been singing songs about their fathers fighting in France and Italy. Somehow, AM 1020 was picking up transmissions from 80 years ago, broadcasts that should have faded into the void long before I was born. The children's laughter shifted, moving from aisle 5 toward aisle 7. I kept my eyes fixed on the dairy section, organizing yogurt containers with obsessive focus. Don't look down aisle 7. The rule was specific, and after my encounter with the Confederate customer, I wasn't taking any chances. But peripheral vision is a cruel thing. Without turning my head, I could see shapes moving in the cereal aisle, small figures darting between the shelves of Cheerios and Lucky Charms. They cast shadows that stretched too long across the floor, shadows that moved independently of their sources. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. If you like the stories, please hype the videos from a button like this just above the comment section. It helps the videos to get more reach and perform well. It would take just a few seconds and cost nothing, but would help the channel grow even faster. Thank you. The singing stopped abruptly. In the sudden quiet, I could hear boxes falling from shelves, one after another, hitting the floor with soft thuds. Cardboard containers of cereal scattered across the aisle. their contents spilling in neat piles that form patterns I didn't want to analyze too closely. Through the radio static, a different voice emerged, younger, clearer than the broadcaster, a child's voice speaking directly through the speakers. "Mister, why won't you look at us? We just want someone to play with. We've been waiting so long, and nobody plays anymore. Everyone's so serious these days." My hands shook as I gripped a gallon of milk. The voice continued, pleading now. "We used to come here with our mamas during the war. Daddy sent money from overseas, and Mama would buy what she could with the ration stamps. Sugar was hard to find, but Mr. Harper's granddaddy always saved some for the children. We were good children, mister. We said our prayers and helped with the victory garden." The temperature in the dairy section dropped. My breath began to fog, and frost formed along the edges of the milk containers. The voice grew sadder, more distant. "We got sick that winter. All of us together. The fever took us before Christmas came. Mama said we'd go to heaven and wait for Daddy to come home from the war. But we're still waiting, mister. Still waiting for someone to play with us." More boxes fell in aisle 7. The sound echoed through the store like dominoes toppling in sequence. I forced myself to keep stocking, but my movements became mechanical, robotic. Fear had settled into my bones, making every action feel rehearsed and empty. "We know you can hear us. We see you every night, walking around our store like you belong here. But this was our place first. We played here when the bombs were falling in Europe and our daddies were dying in foreign fields. This was our safe place." The radio crackled, and the 1944 broadcaster returned. "That's all for tonight's dedications, folks. Remember, keep those victory gardens growing and support our boys overseas. This is Woof, signing off until tomorrow evening." Static filled the speakers, then silence. The laughter had stopped. Aisle 7 stood empty, though dozens of cereal boxes lay scattered across the floor like the aftermath of a child's tantrum. The frost on the milk containers melted quickly, leaving puddles of condensation that reflected the overhead lighting in strange ways. I checked my watch. 2:47 a.m. The children had played for over an hour, singing their modified nursery rhymes and begging for attention I couldn't give them. The rule had worked, but barely. Their voices had grown more insistent toward the end, more demanding. As I walked past aisle 7 to clean up the fallen boxes, mixed in with the modern cereal containers were older packages, brands that hadn't existed for decades, boxes with wartime advertising and rationing information printed on the sides, Kellogg's cornflakes with Victory Bond promotions, Wheaties featuring baseball players from the 1940s. The boxes felt solid, real, but when I tried to read the expiration dates, the numbers kept shifting, rearranging themselves like they couldn't decide what year they wanted to represent. I swept them all into a garbage bag and tried not to think about why some of those vintage cereals smelled like they'd been freshly opened yesterday. I counted to 60, watching my breath fog in the humid Alabama night. When I returned to the meat department, the bleeding had stopped. The floor was clean, dry, with no trace of the blood that had been pooling there minutes before. But the meat itself had changed. Every package now bore different labels. Instead of modern processing plant stamps, they showed handwritten dates from decades past. Processed June 15th, 1943 in faded pencil. Grade A beef, Victory Garden Supply Company. Rationed, family of 4, 1-month supply. The packages felt different too, heavier, more substantial, like the meat inside had been butchered by hand instead of processed by machines. Through the plastic wrap, I could see the cuts weren't uniform, like modern processing. They showed the irregular edges of manual cutting, the kind of butchering done on family farms before industrial agriculture took over. As I arranged the final packages, I heard footsteps in the store. Not the hard-soled shoes of the Confederate customer or the light patter of the war children, but the heavy boots of working men. Multiple sets of footsteps moving with purpose toward the meat department. "That's good beef there," a voice said from behind me. "Been waiting for a proper shipment like this. My family ain't had fresh meat in 3 weeks." I kept my eyes on the display case, arranging packages with exaggerated focus. The yellow apron felt like armor against whatever was happening behind me. "You got any pork chops, son?" My wife's been craving them something fierce, but the rationing board's been tight with the meat stamps lately. Hard to feed a family when the government decides how much protein you can buy. More voices joined the conversation. Men discussing ration books and victory gardens, comparing stories about sons and brothers fighting in Europe. Their words painted a picture of wartime Dothan, a community struggling to maintain normal life, while their young men died on foreign beaches. "My boy Jimmy wrote from Italy last month," one voice said. "Says they're eating canned meat and hardtack most days. Here I am complaining about rationing when he's lucky to get one hot meal a week." "At least your boy's writing letters. Mine ain't sent word in 2 months. Last I heard, his unit was heading towards some place called Anzio." The conversation continued, but something was wrong with it. The voices overlapped in ways that human speech shouldn't. Multiple people speaking the same words at the same time, like a choir reciting lines from a script they'd memorized decades ago. I finished stocking and turned around slowly. The meat department stood empty, but the air retained a residual warmth where the men had been standing. On the floor, I found scattered ration stamps, small paper rectangles marked with numbers and dates from 1943. They looked authentic, printed on the kind of cheap paper the government used during wartime when quality materials were reserved for the war effort. The stamps bore names I didn't recognize: William Patterson, James Morrison, Robert Lee Caldwell. But that last name caught my attention. Caldwell was the retiree I'd replaced, the man who'd worked here for 43 years, before finally giving up the night shift. I picked up the Robert Lee Caldwell ration stamp and examined it closely. The photograph showed a young man, maybe 20 years old, with the same jawline and eye shape as the elderly Caldwell I'd met briefly during my first week. Below the photo, a stamp date: valid June 1943, August 1943. The meat in the display case had returned to normal, modern packages with contemporary labels and processing dates. But the ration stamps remained real in my hands, tangible proof that something had happened in the store during the summer of 1943. Something involving men who came here desperate for food to feed their families, while their sons fought and died in places with foreign names. I tucked the stamps into my notebook, adding them to my growing collection of evidence that Harper's Grocery existed in multiple time periods simultaneously. The yellow apron had protected me somehow, allowed me to witness without participating, to observe without being absorbed into whatever loop these spirits were trapped in. But as I hung the apron back on its rusty hook, I noticed something that made my hands shake. More hooks lined the freezer wall, each one holding a different colored apron: blue, green, red, white, like uniforms for different shifts, different decades, different employees who'd worked here over the years. On the last hook, I found a name tag clipped to a bright orange apron: Jasper Whitmore, night shift manager. The fourth rule appeared overnight, scrawled in pencil beneath the others. If the phone rings between 3 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., answer with Harper's Grocery, night service. How may I help you? Do not give your real name. If the caller asks for Jasper Whitmore specifically, hang up immediately and lock yourself in the office until sunrise. Finding my name written in a rule meant for my protection sent ice through my veins. I'd been documenting everything in my notebook. The Confederate coins, the children's songs, the ration stamps. But this felt different. Personal. Like whatever haunted Harper's grocery had taken specific notice of me. The phone rang at exactly 3:17 a.m. on Saturday night. I'd been organizing the pharmacy section, restocking over-the-counter medications, and arranging prescription pickup bags for Monday morning. The old rotary phone behind the customer service counter echoed through the store with its sharp, metallic ring. Each tone seemed to stretch longer than the last, creating a rhythm that reminded me of church bells tolling for Sunday service. Harper's Grocery, night service. How may I help you? I said, following the rule precisely. Static filled the line. Then a woman's voice emerged through the crackling interference. She spoke with the refined accent of old Dauphin money, the kind of pronunciation my grandmother used when she wanted to impress the ladies at her garden club meetings. Good evening. I'm calling about my grocery order from last Tuesday. I placed it with a young man named Jasper, and he promised delivery by Friday afternoon. My family's been waiting, and frankly, I'm quite disappointed with the service. My mouth went dry. I gripped the phone tighter, focusing on the rule's instructions. Don't give your real name. But she'd already mentioned it, already connected me to some transaction I've never made. Ma'am, I don't show any record of that order in our system. Perhaps there's been some confusion about the name. No confusion whatsoever. Jasper Whitmore took my order personally. A polite young man with excellent handwriting. He wrote everything down in that little notebook of his. 2 pounds of butter, a dozen eggs, fresh bread, and some of those lovely peaches from the orchard outside town. The notebook. She knew about my notebook, the one where I had been recording supernatural encounters, but I'd never taken grocery orders, never promised anyone delivery service. Ma'am, what day are you calling from? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Wrong thing to ask, but something about her voice suggested she wasn't calling from the same time period I was living in. Why, it's Saturday evening, August 12th. Are you feeling all right, dear? You sound confused. She hadn't mentioned the year. I checked the calendar on the counter. August 12th fell on a Saturday, but in 2024, not whatever year she was calling from. Mrs. I prompted, hoping she'd give me a name. Mrs. Dorothy Patterson from Wicksburg Road. My husband owns Patterson's Hardware on Foster Street. Surely you remember me. I've been shopping at Harper's since your grandfather opened the store. Patterson. I'd heard that name before, in the radio broadcast during the children's encounter. Mrs. Patterson from the Wicksburg community, calling in about her prize-winning tomatoes. But that broadcast had been from 1944, and this woman sounded like she was calling from an even earlier time period. Mrs. Patterson, I think there might be some confusion about... Don't you dare try to weasel out of this, young man. My husband fought in the Great War, and we know the value of keeping promises. If Jasper Whitmore said he'd deliver groceries, then Jasper Whitmore will deliver groceries. Where is he? The Great War. She was talking about World War I, not World War II. This woman was calling from the 1920s, maybe early 1930s, asking for someone named Jasper Whitmore, who apparently worked at Harper's Grocery decades before I was born. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but Jasper isn't available right now. Can I take a message? Well, I should hope not. It's past 3 in the morning. What kind of establishment are you running there? But since you asked, yes, tell him Mrs. Patterson called. Tell him my family's waiting, and we don't appreciate being forgotten. Good night. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the rotary phone. Mrs. Patterson had hung up without asking for my name, without pressing the issue further. But her words echoed in my mind. What kind of establishment are you running there? Like she knew I was working the night shift. Like she expected Harper's to be open at 3 a.m. in whatever decade she was calling from. I pulled out my notebook and added her call to my growing list of temporal encounters. As I wrote, more details bothered me. She'd mentioned Jasper's excellent handwriting and his habit of writing things down in a notebook. Those details described me perfectly, but applied to someone who'd worked here generations before I was born. The phone rang again at 3:24 a.m. This time, a man's voice came through the static. Younger, more urgent, with the slight drawl of rural Alabama. Harper's? Thank God. This is Deputy Bill Morrison with the Houston County Sheriff's Department. We got reports of suspicious activity at your location. Can you confirm everything's secure? Everything seems normal here, Deputy. What kind of suspicious activity? Witnesses reported seeing lights moving around inside after hours. Maybe someone trying to break in through the loading dock. We're sending a patrol car by to check the perimeter, but the officer needs to speak with whoever's working tonight. What's your name, son? The rule flashed through my mind. If the caller asks for Jasper Whitmore specifically, hang up immediately. But he hadn't asked for me by name. Not yet. I'm the night stock clerk. Been here all evening. Good. The officer should be there in about 10 minutes. His name's Deputy Caldwell, been with the department since '78. Real professional guy, knows that area well. Just let him walk through, make sure everything's secure. Deputy Caldwell. Another connection to the family name I'd seen on ration stamps and heard from Tommy Harper. But which generation of Caldwells was this caller talking about? Deputy, can I ask what year this is? Static filled the line, louder than before. When the voice returned, it sounded different, older, more strained. Son. That's a strange question to ask. Are you feeling all right? Maybe you should sit down until Deputy Caldwell arrives. Don't want you passing out on the job. Just want to make sure I write the correct date on the incident report. It's August 12th, 1987. Saturday night going into Sunday morning. Look, the deputy's pulling up now. Go let him in through the front entrance. 1987. The same date Mrs. Patterson had mentioned, but 63 years later. I looked toward the front windows, expecting to see patrol car headlights in the parking lot. Nothing. Highway 231 stretched empty in both directions, lit only by the yellow glow of sodium streetlights. Deputy, I don't see any patrol car outside. What? That's not possible. I just watched him pull into your parking lot. Are you sure you're looking in the right direction? The line crackled with interference, and when it cleared, in the background of the call, faint but distinct, I could hear the same children's voices from aisle 7 singing their modified nursery rhymes. Deputy Morrison? Are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. But something's wrong. Deputy Caldwell just radioed in. Says the store looks empty from outside, but he can see someone moving around inside. Someone wearing an orange apron. Orange apron. The one I'd found hanging in the freezer with my name tag attached. Is the person inside named Jasper Whitmore? The static grew louder, almost drowning out the deputy's response. How did you... Son, that's exactly what Deputy Caldwell just reported. Says there's a young man named Jasper Whitmore working the night shift, just like always. Been working there for years, apparently. Real, reliable employee. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the counter before swinging on its coiled cord. Through the speakers, I could hear Deputy Morrison calling my name, asking if I was still there, growing more concerned with each repetition. But I was already running toward the office, following the rules instructions. Lock yourself in until sunrise. Because whatever was happening at Harper's Grocery, I was apparently part of it in ways I'd never understood. The fifth rule waited for me Monday morning, written in my own handwriting across the bottom of the page. When the loading dock door opens by itself after 4 a.m., someone from your family will enter. They are not who they appear to be. Speak only about work schedules and inventory. Do not mention anything that happened after 1963. I stared at the words until my eyes watered. My handwriting, definitely. The same loops and slants I'd used since high school. But I had no memory of writing those words. The ink looked fresh, like I'd added the rule during my sleep or some kind of fugue state. The office had felt safe until sunrise, exactly as the previous rule promised. But safety was becoming relative at Harper's Grocery. Each night brought new evidence that I wasn't just witnessing supernatural events. I was somehow participating in them across multiple decades simultaneously. I called Tommy Harper before my shift started Tuesday evening. Tommy, I need to ask you something about the store's history. Did anyone named Jasper Whitmore ever work here before me? Silence stretched across the phone line. When Tommy finally spoke, his voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. Where did you hear that name? It's complicated. Did he work here or not? Jasper, we need to talk. Can you come in an hour before your shift tonight? There's something I should have told you when I hired you. He met me in the parking lot at 9 p.m., sitting in his pickup truck with the engine running. The dashboard lights cast shadows across his face that made him look older, more worn down than I'd ever seen him. My granddaddy hired the first Jasper Whitmore in 1924, Tommy said without preamble. Young man from Enterprise, needed work after his daddy lost the farm. Good employee, reliable, worked the night shift for 3 years. What happened to him? Nobody knows. One morning in 1927, my granddaddy came in to find the store perfectly stocked and organized, but Jasper was gone. Left his final timesheet on the counter, everything written out neat as you please, but he never collected his last paycheck. Tommy shifted in his seat, avoiding my eyes. The second Jasper Whitmore showed up in 1943. Different man entirely. Older, from up around Birmingham. Same first and last name, which seemed like a strange coincidence. He worked through the war years, kept the store running when most young men were overseas. Good with the rationing paperwork, understood the government regulations. And same thing. Vanished one morning in 1946, left everything in perfect order. Never said goodbye, never came back for his pay. The pattern was becoming clear, and I didn't like where it led. How many Jasper Whitmores have worked here, Tommy? You're the fourth. Third one showed up in 1987, worked until 1991. Before that, well, there might have been others. My daddy wasn't good at keeping records, and some of the old employee files got damaged in Hurricane Frederick. Tommy finally looked at me directly. Thing is, Jasper, I didn't seek you out for this job. You came to me, remember? Walked in 3 months ago with a completed application, said you'd heard we needed night help. I thought it was strange that you knew about the opening before I'd posted it anywhere, but we did need someone. I remembered applying differently, seeing a help wanted sign in the window, filling out paperwork at the customer service counter. But Tommy's version felt equally true, like both memories existed simultaneously. The rules, I said. Where did they come from? Each Jasper left them for the next one. Original set was written in 1927, but they get updated over time. New situations, new complications. That explained why the fifth rule was in my handwriting. Somehow, I'd written instructions for myself from a future I hadn't reached yet. My shift started normally enough. I stocked shelves, cleaned the floors, organized the pharmacy section. But at 4:23 a.m., the loading dock door began to rise with a mechanical grinding that echoed through the empty store. My sister Rebecca walked through the opening. She looked exactly like she had in high school, 17 years old, blonde hair in a ponytail, wearing her Dothan High cheerleading uniform. Rebecca had graduated in 2015 and moved to Atlanta for college. She was 27 now, married, working as a nurse at Emory Hospital. This version of her was frozen in time from 9 years ago. "Hey, Jasper," she called out, waving enthusiastically. "Mom sent me to check on you." "She's worried about your new job." I forced myself to follow the rule. Speak only about work schedules and inventory. Shift's going fine. Restocked the dairy section, organized the pharmacy, should finish before sunrise. Rebecca walked closer, her cheerleading shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Every detail looked perfect. The slight chip in her front tooth from falling off her bike at age 12, the scar on her left hand from helping Dad fix the fence. But something fundamental was wrong with her presence here. "Are you eating enough? You look thin. And when's the last time you came home for Sunday dinner? Mom makes that pot roast you love." Work schedule's been keeping me busy. Inventory takes time. You work too much, Jasper. Remember when we used to go fishing at Blue Springs? Dad taught us how to bait hooks and clean catfish. Those were good times before everything got so complicated. She was testing me, trying to get me to engage with memories and emotions, but the rule was specific: nothing after 1963. Blue Springs State Park hadn't been established until 1965. Inventory system works well here. Tommy Harper keeps good records. Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. Her cheerleader enthusiasm began to crack around the edges, revealing something else underneath. "Don't you miss home, Jasper? Don't you miss being part of a family? Working here every night, alone with all these strange things happening. It's not healthy. Schedule suits me fine. Night shifts pay well. What about your dreams? Remember when you wanted to be a teacher? You were good with kids, always helping with their homework. Mrs. Johnson at the elementary school said you had natural talent. Mrs. Johnson had been my third-grade teacher, and I'd never expressed interest in becoming an educator. This version of Rebecca was pulling information from sources I didn't recognize, constructing false memories to manipulate my emotions. Inventory management is steady work, good benefits. Rebecca's appearance began to shift subtly. Her cheerleading uniform faded to older styles, leather sweaters from the 1950s, then flapper dresses from the 1920s. Her blonde hair darkened to brown, then changed texture entirely. But her face remained my sister's face, wearing expressions of concern that felt genuine despite their supernatural origin. "You can't stay here forever, Jasper. This place, it changes people, makes them forget who they really are." The other Jaspers thought they could handle it too, thought they were strong enough to work here without being affected. What happened to them? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Wrong thing to ask, breaking the rule about keeping conversations focused on work topics. Rebecca's smile returned, but now it looked hungry. They became part of the store, Jasper. Part of its history, its foundation. They're still here, still working their shifts, still following the rules. You've met them. The customer asking for molasses, the deputy calling about security checks, all the voices on that old radio. They're all previous employees, All people who worked here long enough to become absorbed into whatever keeps this place running. That's not possible. Look at your employment records, Jasper. Really look at them. Check the dates, the signatures, the handwriting. You've been working here longer than 3 months. Much longer. She was right. Now that she mentioned it, I couldn't clearly remember my first day on the job. The memories felt vague, like stories someone had told me about someone else's life. But I remembered stocking these same shelves, following these same rules, dealing with these same supernatural encounters for... how long? The rules protect you, Rebecca continued, but they also bind you. Each night you follow them, you become more connected to this place, more dependent on its timeline instead of your own. The previous Jaspers thought they were just temporary employees, just working here until something better came along. And they never left. They couldn't leave. After a while, Harper's Grocery became their entire reality. Past, present, and future collapsed into eternal night shifts, eternal rule following, eternal service to customers who died decades ago. Rebecca reached out to touch my face, and her hand felt real. Warm skin and familiar calluses from years of cheerleading practice. But when I looked at her shadow cast by the loading dock lights, it showed the silhouette of someone much older, someone wearing clothes from a different era entirely. You still have time, Jasper. You can still remember who you were before this job. But you need to choose soon, because tomorrow night brings rule number 6. The loading dock door began closing automatically, and Rebecca backed toward it with steps that looked rehearsed, like she'd performed this scene many times before. Don't become another voice on the radio, little brother. Don't become another customer asking for items that haven't been sold in 50 years. She disappeared into the darkness beyond the loading dock, leaving me alone with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. But one thing was becoming clear. I needed to find those employment records and see exactly how long I'd been working at Harper's Grocery. Because my memories of life before this job were starting to feel as distant and unreliable as the voices of customers from the Civil War. The 6th rule appeared Thursday morning, written in handwriting that shifted between different styles as I watched. The store's filing cabinet contains employment records dating back to 1924. Do not read your own file until you understand the choice you must make. When you find the 7th rule, remember that some doors can only be opened from the inside. I spent my Thursday afternoon calling every person I could think of who might remember my life before Harper's Grocery. The conversations left me more confused than enlightened. My mother sounded genuinely puzzled when I asked about my job history. Jasper, honey, you've been working nights at that grocery store for years now. Since you graduated from Troy University, remember? You tried teaching for a while, but it didn't work out. So you took the position at Harper's. That didn't match my memories. I remembered graduating college just 2 years ago, not long enough to have worked anywhere for years. But when I pressed for specific dates, Mom's voice grew distant, like she was reading from notes instead of recalling actual events. Let me see. You started in 2019, I think? Or was it 2020? Time moves so fast these days. But you've always worked there, Jasper. It's what you do. My sister Rebecca didn't answer her phone. When I called Emory Hospital, they told me no nurse named Rebecca Whitmore had ever been employed there. According to their records, no Rebecca Whitmore existed in their system at all. My college roommate Danny gave me the strangest response of all. Jasper? Man, I haven't heard from you since you took that job at the grocery store. That was... damn, when was that? Feels like forever ago. You said it was temporary, just until you found something better, but then you kind of disappeared. Stopped answering texts, stopped showing up to hang out. We figured you were just busy with work. Danny, when exactly did I start working there? I don't know, man. A while back. You were excited about it at first, said it was easy money for simple work. But then you changed, got quiet, distracted, started talking about weird rules and night shifts like they were the most important thing in the world. Every conversation followed the same pattern. People remembered me working at Harper's, but couldn't pin down when it started, or how long I'd been there. Their memories seemed constructed, artificial, like someone had edited my employment history into their minds without bothering to make the timeline coherent. That night, I went straight to Tommy's office and the filing cabinet that dominated one corner. 4 drawers tall, painted institutional green, with a lock that looked original to the 1950s. Tommy had left his keys on the desk, almost like he wanted me to investigate. The employee files were organized by decade. The 1920s drawer contained records for dozens of workers: day shift clerks, stock boys, delivery drivers. But only one name appeared on the night shift schedules: Jasper Whitmore, employed from March 1924 to October 1927. His employment application was written in careful script on yellowed paper. Age, 22. Previous experience, farm work, general labor. Reason for seeking employment, family farm foreclosed, needs steady income. The signature matched handwriting samples from my college papers perfectly. The 1940s drawer told the same story. Jasper Whitmore, employed from January 1943 to September 1946. Age, 25. Previous experience, department store clerk, inventory management. This application bore a different signature, but one that looked like my handwriting might evolve into if I spent years practicing formal penmanship. 1987 to 1991. Jasper Whitmore, age 24. Previous experience: warehouse work, third shift supervisor. The signature was definitely mine, but written with confidence I didn't remember possessing. Like someone who'd been signing documents professionally for years. Each file contained performance reviews written by Harper family members across different generations. All positive, all emphasizing the same qualities. Reliable night worker, follows instructions precisely, never misses shifts, handles unusual situations with appropriate discretion. The 2020s drawer held my current file, but the contents made no sense. My employment application was dated March 15, 2019, not 3 months ago. 5 years of performance reviews filled the folder, documenting raises, commendations, and increasing responsibility. According to these records, I had been promoted to night manager in 2021 and had trained 3 different day shift employees. But the most disturbing document was a medical report dated 6 months ago. Harper's Grocery had apparently sent me for a psychological evaluation after what the report termed increasing episodes of temporal confusion and memory inconsistencies. The psychologist's notes were clinical and frightening. Patient exhibits classic symptoms of dissociative identity disorder, complicated by severe memory fragmentation. He appears to believe he has only recently begun employment at Harper's Grocery, despite documented evidence of 5 years' continuous service. When presented with his employment records, he insists they belong to someone else sharing his name. Patients' memory gaps are selective and consistent. He recalls his childhood, education, and general life history with reasonable accuracy. However, he cannot provide coherent recollections of his adult working life or any events from the past 5 years. This selective amnesia suggests psychological rather than neurological causation. Recommend continued employment in familiar environment while patient undergoes treatment for dissociative episodes. Disrupting his established routine may exacerbate symptoms. The workplace appears to provide stability and structure that support his functioning despite memory impairments. The report was signed by Dr. Margaret Chen from Southeast Alabama Mental Health Services. I'd never heard of her, never visited a psychologist, never authorized any medical evaluation. But the document looked authentic, complete with official letterhead and my supposed signature on consent forms. At the bottom of my file, I found a handwritten note from Tommy Harper, dated 2 weeks ago. Jasper's condition appears to be stabilizing within the store environment. He performs his duties effectively and shows no signs of distress when following established routines. The temporal displacement episodes have decreased in frequency since he began adhering strictly to the rule system. Recommend continuation of current protocols. Note: similar patterns observed with previous JW employees. Store environment seems to provide therapeutic benefit for individuals experiencing this specific type of dissociative disorder. Consider researching family history for genetic predisposition to temporal perception issues. JW employees. Previous ones. Tommy knew about the pattern, had been documenting it, had been treating my condition as a medical issue rather than a supernatural one. But that didn't explain the Confederate coins, the 1944 radio broadcasts, or the World War II era children singing in the cereal aisle. Unless those encounters were symptoms of my dissociative disorder rather than actual paranormal events. I grabbed my notebook and reviewed my documentation from the past 3 months. Every supernatural encounter, every strange rule, every historical customer, all recorded in my handwriting, but now I couldn't trust my own perceptions. How much of what I'd experienced was real, and how much was elaborated delusion created by a fractured mind. The phone rang at 3:15 a.m., and I answered automatically. "Harper's Grocery, night service, how may I help you?" "Jasper, it's Dr. Chin. I've been trying to reach you about our missed appointment yesterday. Are you experiencing any new symptoms? Any confusion about dates or timeline issues?" Dr. Chen, the psychologist whose report I've just read. "I don't remember scheduling an appointment. That's concerning. We've been meeting weekly for 6 months now, working on your memory integration therapy. You were making excellent progress until recently. Have you been taking your medication as prescribed?" Medication. I looked through my file again and found prescription receipts stapled to insurance forms. Risperidone for psychotic symptoms, Lamictal for mood stabilization, Adderall for attention issues, all filled at the Harper's Grocery Pharmacy, all picked up by me according to the timestamps. "Jasper, I need you to listen carefully. Your condition creates false memories and elaborate fantasy scenarios. The rules you believe you're following, the supernatural customers, the historical encounters, these are manifestations of your dissociative episodes. But they're not real. Then explain the Confederate coins. Explain the ration stamps. You collect historical memorabilia. It's part of your special interest pattern. You bring items from your collection to work and incorporate them into your fantasy narratives. The store humors this behavior because it doesn't interfere with your job performance." I opened my notebook to the page where I'd taped the 1943 ration stamp. It was still there, real and solid. But now I noticed something I'd missed before. A small sticker on the back with Reproduction Civil War Museum Gift Shop, $3.99. "Dr. Chin, how long have I been working at Harper's?" 5 years, Jasper. Since March 2019. You applied for the position during a lucid period between dissociative episodes. The stable routine and familiar environment help manage your symptoms. The 7th rule appeared on my notebook page as she spoke, writing itself in ink that seemed to emerge from the paper itself. "The choice has always been yours, Jasper. Continue working the night shift in safety and stability, or leave the store and risk losing the structure that keeps your condition manageable. Some employees choose to stay forever. Others choose to remember who they were before. Friday night arrived with the weight of finality. I'd spent the day researching Dr. Chin, Southeast Alabama Mental Health Services, and my supposed medical history. Everything checked out: appointment records, prescription histories, insurance claims. According to every official document, I was a long-term patient with severe dissociative episodes who'd found stability working night shifts at Harper's Grocery. But I'd also driven to my old apartment address for my driver's license. The landlord, Mrs. Rodriguez, remembered me clearly. "Jasper?" "Sure. You lived here until about 5 years ago. Nice tenant, quiet, always paid rent on time. But then you started acting strange, talking about Civil War ghosts and phantom customers. We were worried about you. Finally, you said you'd found a place that understood your situation better." 5 years. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same timeline. I've been working at Harper's since 2019, not 3 months. But how could I lose 5 years of memory so completely? My shift started at 10 p.m. with Tommy waiting in the parking lot. "Jasper, we need to talk before you go in tonight." Dr. Chen called me. "She is concerned about your recent behavior. Says you've been questioning your treatment plan." "Tommy, tell me the truth. Am I sick, or is this place haunted?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the store's facade. The building looked older in the darkness, more substantial, like it had grown roots deep into the Alabama soil. "Maybe both," he said finally. "My family's owned this store for 4 generations. We've seen things that don't make sense, experienced events that can't be explained rationally. But we've also learned that some people are more sensitive to those experiences than others." "And the Jasper Whitmores?" "Every generation, someone with that name shows up needing work. Always the same age, always with similar backgrounds, always perfect for the night shift. My great-grandfather documented it. My grandfather continued the pattern. My father added to the records. Now it's my responsibility." Tommy pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "These are the real files, Jasper. Not the official employment records, but what actually happens here. Every Jasper Whitmore has experienced the same progression. First they see historical customers, then they start finding artifacts, then they begin questioning their own memories. The medical explanation helps some people cope, but it doesn't explain everything." I opened the folder. Photographs from different decades showed 4 different men, all with my face, all wearing Harper's Grocery aprons. The resemblance was exact, not just similar, like the same person photographed across 90 years. "The supernatural customers are real," Tommy continued. "So are the children's voices, the Confederate coins, all of it. But they only appear to people who fit a certain psychological profile. People with fluid relationships to time and memory. People whose minds can process multiple timelines simultaneously. So I am sick. You're different. And that difference makes you valuable here, but dangerous everywhere else. The dissociative episodes only happen when you try to live a normal life outside this store. Here, following the rules, your mind finds peace. Because I become part of the haunting. Because you become a bridge between past and present. The historical customers need someone who can see them, interact with them, help them complete whatever business keeps them tethered to this place. You provide that service." Tommy handed me the keys to the store. "Tonight, you decide. Stay and accept your role as Harper's permanent night manager, or leave and risk the psychological consequences of returning to a world your mind can't properly process. Dr. Chen is standing by either way, to help you transition out or to continue supporting your work here. Inside, the store felt different, more alive, more aware of my presence. The aisles seemed to stretch longer than usual, creating spaces that hadn't existed during previous shifts. The lighting came from sources I couldn't identify, not the overhead fixtures, but a warm glow that emanated from the walls themselves. At 11:30, I began stocking produce as the first rule required. The Confederate customer appeared immediately, no longer hiding behind the veil of invisibility. He stood directly in front of me, an elderly man in worn gray wool, his face bearing the exhaustion of someone who'd fought through 4 years of war. "Son, I've been waiting for this conversation for a long time. You've been kind enough to ignore me all these months, following the rules like a proper employee. But tonight, I think you deserve to understand what's happening here. Are you real? Real as anyone can be after dying in 1894. Name's Colonel William Patterson, late of the 15th Alabama Infantry. I fought at Shiloh, Chickamauga, and a dozen other battles that don't matter now. What matters is that I've been trapped in this place since my heart gave out while buying supplies for my granddaughter's wedding." The children appeared next, materializing from aisle 7 without any attempt at concealment. 6 young faces, all bearing the pallor of fever victims, all wearing clothes from the 1940s. "We died during the influenza outbreak of 1943, the eldest girl explained. "Our family shopped here when food was rationed, when sugar was precious and meat was scarce. This store fed our community during the hardest times, so when we passed on, we stayed to help." "Help with what?" "Helping people like you," Colonel Patterson said. "People whose minds exist partially outside normal time. You experience past and present simultaneously, which makes regular life chaotic, but makes this work possible." The World War II-era spirits appeared, the men with their ration stamps and desperate voices, the women in carefully mended dresses, counting coins for precious groceries. They filled the store with warmth and purpose, transforming it from a commercial space into something resembling a community center from decades past. "Each generation needs someone who can bridge the gap," Patterson continued. "Someone who can help us complete our unfinished business so we can finally move on. The previous Jaspers served their terms and chose what came next. What happened to them? The first one accepted a permanent position and worked here until 1963, when he finally helped the last of my regiment find peace. The second served until 1979, guiding the influenza children toward whatever comes after. The third worked until 1995, helping the World War II families resolve their wartime trauma. And now it's my turn. Now it's your choice. Dr. Chen's medical model works for people who can't handle the truth, but you've proven capable of seeing us clearly. You can serve a few more years, help us find closure, then move on to whatever life you want. Or you can leave tonight and let the next Jasper Whitmore handle our needs." At 5:30 a.m., as dawn approached, all the spirits gathered in the main aisle. Dozens of them, customers from across 150 years of Alabama history, all connected to this place, all waiting for someone to help them finish their earthly concerns. "Time to choose, son," Colonel Patterson said gently, "but know that either choice is honorable. Either choice serves a purpose." I looked at my notebook, where the 7 rules had guided me through 3 months, or 5 years, of supernatural encounters. The handwriting had been mine all along, written by versions of myself that existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. The medical explanation and the supernatural reality weren't contradictory. They were complementary aspects of the same truth. My mind worked differently, allowing me to perceive and interact with temporal anomalies that most people couldn't access. That difference made normal life difficult, but made this work essential. I could stay and serve these spirits until their business was complete, then move on when the job was finished. Or I could leave and trust that another Jasper Whitmore would appear when the time was right. Both choices honored the tradition. Both choices served the community of past and present. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and began writing the 8th rule, knowing that whatever I decided, the work at Harper's Grocery would continue. The help wanted sign appeared in Harper's Grocery window on a Tuesday morning in October, handwritten on the same yellowed cardstock that had advertised the position when I first applied. Tommy Harper posted it himself, then called Dr. Chen to update my final status. Patient has achieved therapeutic resolution and chosen independent living. Treatment successful. My replacement walked through the door that same afternoon. His name was Jasper Whitmore, age 24, recently graduated from Auburn University with a degree in history. He carried a notebook identical to mine and spoke with the same slight North Alabama accent I'd been told I had. When Tommy showed him the employee handbook, Jasper asked about the additional rules written on the separate sheet of paper. "Just follow them exactly," Tommy advised. The previous employee left detailed instructions. He wanted to make sure the transition went smoothly. I watched this conversation from my car in the parking lot, having driven down from Birmingham where I had started my new job at the Department of Archives and History. My memory had clarified during those final weeks at the store. 5 years of employment, not 3 months, helping historical spirits find peace through patient interaction and careful rule following. The work had been real. The medical treatment had been real. Both had served their purpose. Dr. Chem had explained it during our last session. Your mind processes temporal information differently than most people. In structured environments like Harper's, this creates meaningful interactions with residual historical consciousness. In unstructured environments, it manifests as dissociative episodes. You've learned to channel your unique neurology constructively. The 8th rule I'd written in my notebook now guided the new Jasper. The spirits are memories seeking resolution, not threats requiring fear. Help them complete their unfinished business with patience and respect. When their work is done, your work is done. Colonel Patterson had been the last to leave, finally departing after I'd helped him write a letter to descendants he'd never met. The influenza children had moved on after I'd arranged for a memorial plaque at the elementary school they'd attended. The World War II families had found peace when I'd connected their stories to a local historian documenting wartime experiences. Each resolution had felt like lifting weight from the store itself. By my final night, Harper's had become simply a grocery store again, still old, still atmospheric, but no longer serving as a way station for historical consciousness seeking closure. The new Jasper would have his own encounters, his own spirits to help, his own choice to make when the work was complete. The cycle would continue until Dothan's history had fully processed its accumulated trauma, one night shift at a time. I started my car and drove back to Birmingham, leaving Harper's Grocery behind for the final time. In my rearview mirror, I could see the new Jasper inside, already organizing the produce section according to rules that would soon make perfect sense to him. My apartment overlooked the Alabama River, and I'd furnished it with historical reproductions that reminded me of my time at the store without triggering dissociative episodes. The work at Archives and History utilized my temporal sensitivity constructively, helping researchers understand how historical documents connected across different time periods identifying patterns in community memory that others missed. Sometimes I drove past Harper's on Highway 231, checking to see if the help wanted sign had returned to the window. When it finally did, I'd know that another cycle had completed successfully, that another collection of historical spirits had found the resolution they needed to move forward. Until then, the work continued. Different location, different responsibilities, but the same essential purpose: helping the past communicate with the present in ways that served both timelines. The Jasper Whitmores of Harper's Grocery were memory workers, tending to the psychological archaeology of a community that had experience.